You are listening to Model Mentality. Welcome to Let's Get Clinical by Dr. Allie. In this segment, I explore connecting the dots between our guests' personal stories and the larger mental health context. You've been listening to our interview with Nadine Leopold. Let's review Nadine's story. Nadine grew up in Austria, and as she describes in her teens, her physical appearance was tall and thin in comparison to her peers, and this led to years of being painfully bullied. Around the age of 14, as her parents were going through a divorce, Nadine was looking for support and found immediate comfort in dating someone who was 4 to 5 years older. This led to a relationship of both emotional and physical abuse, which she struggled to remove herself from. With the physical break of her modeling career, she was able to leave him. 1 year later, she developed an eating disorder, and later on in her 20s, she experienced a period of darkness for about 1 year. And for the past 2 years, Nadine, with the support of her loved ones and setting boundaries, has been on the road to recovery and wants to share her story so that others who are struggling understand the importance of seeking help. 2 things stand out to me from a clinical perspective of Nadine's story. First, her early development embedded with risk factors for her mental health, and second, her eating disorder leading up to the period of darkness in her early 20s. So first, what about her early years and mental health? Nadine experienced 3 things in her childhood, which can have both short and long-term impact on mental health: bullying, feeling isolated through her parents' divorce, and a relationship of abuse. With Nadine, the painful experience of bullying led her to feel that she never fit in. She was made fun of simply because of how she looks, something that she was born with, something that she had no control over. Doesn't this seem so unfair? And alarmingly, bullying is so common. 1 in 5 high school students in a given year report being bullied, according to the Centers for Disease Control. And we know that bullying can lead to social and emotional problems, physical injury, damaged self-esteem, and problems adjusting to school. In aggregate, that's a huge mental health toll on our youth. And to take this further, in the context of both bullying and her parents' divorce, she felt isolated and longed to fit in. When parents divorce or separate, this can cause a variety of issues, from academic difficulties to risky and reckless behavior, including substance abuse and depressed mood. Then along came an older boy in Nadine's life, who at first provided comfort and pulled her out of social isolation, since dating someone older was considered cool. But she soon became entrapped in a relationship of both emotional manipulation and physical abuse. So let's stop there. Abuse, whether physical, emotional, or sexual, can impact mental health long-term and lead to anxiety, substance use, eating disorders, self-injury, and suicide. And women are usually more likely to be impacted. And to make the situation worse, Nadine was made to feel that the abuse was all her fault. It was not her fault. One thing is clear: abuse is never your fault. It is the fault of the abuser. I'm calling all of this out because it is all of our jobs as parents, as citizens, as members of our community to understand mental health risk factors in young people and work to prevent mental health consequences. If Nadine had access to early education on mental health and readily available mental health care in high school, the eating disorder and the period of darkness which ensued may have been prevented. Let's move to the second aspect of her story. What about her eating disorder leading up to the period of darkness in her early 20s? As Nadine found the courage to leave the relationship as her modeling career took off, the eating disorder began to emerge around the age of 16. In the public eye, she looked great. In private, she was in a state of psychological distress and found comfort in control over her food intake. Can you imagine the energy that this takes to put on a perfectly poised performance for everyone else every day at work when there is utter emotional turmoil inside? Nadine became obsessed with food, and her eating disorder progressed into daily binging and purging by the age of 20 in order to be fit enough for work. By the time Nadine was 22 to 23 years of age, she fell into a period of darkness for about 1 year, which, in speaking with her and understanding her symptoms, is consistent with depression. From utter exhaustion, panic attacks, hopelessness, and feeling that life was not worth living, Nadine was depressed, scared, did not feel like herself and was overwhelmed by her emotional state. Bullying, divorce, and abuse, which were immensely painful and unprocessed, set the stage for the eating disorder and depression. And because Nadine kept it inside, she felt isolated. She tried to see therapists, but continuity was disrupted due to her modeling career, and she often had the thought, how will people take me seriously given how I look on the outside as a model? Her physicality has been a central theme in her life. She was bullied because of her physical body, and later, the perceived perfection of her physical body led her to feeling that people may not believe what was going on inside, given the picture-perfect exterior. It wasn't until she started to open up to her best friends, find words for her emotions, and feel connected in her vulnerabilities that she started to feel better as she realized that she is not alone. We know that social support is protective for mental health, and for the past 2 years, she has made changes in her life that are better for her overall well-being. It's hard for so many to be vulnerable and to trust the person in front of you with the things that are painful. But to be vulnerable is a strength. And this is why we are telling Nadine's story, so that you, our listeners, understand that many people struggle with the same things that Nadine has faced, both within and outside of the modeling profession. And we want you to understand that you are not alone, that there is power in speaking up and in asking for and receiving help. Thanks for listening to Let's Get Clinical by Dr. Allie. Please check our show notes for references and more information on this episode. As always, if you are in crisis or you think you may have an emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. If you're having suicidal thoughts, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255 to talk to a skilled, trained counselor at a crisis center in your area at any time. If you are located outside of the United States, call your local emergency line immediately. What you have heard on Model Mentality does not represent what would take place during a psychiatric assessment or an actual therapy session.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Model Mentality. If you like today's content, please subscribe to Model Mentality or wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, don't forget to rate and review us. Model Mentality is brought to you by Mind Studios.